Hello. Today, our guest is architect Shahab Ghani Khan. He is an architect since last 46 plus years. We don't hear about Pakistani architects a lot, and looking at his background and experience, it is quite amazing. He has been in Pakistan since last 46 years, running a practice which is grounded in architecture and sustainable architecture and has done a wide range of projects in Pakistan. He was also chairman of Pakistan Council of Architects and Town Planners, PCATP, and president of Institute of Architects Pakistan. And for that reason, he has traveled to different parts of the world, including Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Bhutan, America. He has a huge experience and he has been very engaged with professional bodies for the improvement and betterment of education, professionalism in architecture, and helping young generation to come up and develop. Today's discussion is very important because, in my mind, also coming from architecture, and I'm smiling because I have known Shahab over 20 years. I was a young architect when I met with him at Union of International Architects Conference in Chicago. And that's where I learned how important it is to be part of the professional bodies too. I would first ask architect Shahab to walk us through his own journey, how he got started in architecture and where he was when he realized that there is more in architecture than just doing the professional practice.
Good morning, Assalamu alaikum from Karachi. Well, the journey, I should maybe start from when I did my high school or 12 years of education. After that, that was 1970. In those days, in late 60s and early 70s, there was few universities all over the country, few, and architecture, there were minimum. I think Lahore was the only one and NCA. But my journey, I had no idea who all offered architecture. Because I was not a brilliant student, I was a mediocre student. So I started applying abroad. We had a system where the government allowed you to do only those degrees which were not offered in your country. So going through that list, there was ceramics, there was glass and ceramics, there was all kinds of degrees, pharmacy. Architecture happened to be one of them. My father was a civil engineer. So somehow I said, okay, let's write architecture. So I ended up going to America. I ended up going to Oregon because my brother and another friend from Karachi were doing architecture. And that's when I joined University of Oregon. My interest went up because Oregon was, architecture was not designing buildings or not, it was more like being sustainable and being, green and whatnot. Oregon was, in 70s, it was far ahead than most of the universities or most of the states. And from then onwards, I did well. I graduated. Now, after living there 5 years in the US, it's not an easy decision to come back. My decision, in hindsight, I think was good because if I would have stayed there, maybe I would have come back. And then coming back, it was very interesting because there were only a few architectural firms in Karachi. So I applied at a few places. I ended up working with Habib Fidali, a well-known architect. And I was the only architect there. The rest were all, architectural assistants. And I learned a lot from Habib, and my journey into architecture started then. Altogether, there must have been nationwide 400 architects maybe by qualification. The clients didn't come to you for buildings. They came to you for homes, for houses. And they were all rich clients, right? So you ended up designing for the upper class and the rich ones. Although in 70s, even the upper middle class. With Habib, I was very lucky. Habib used to do a lot of houses, but then he had a few projects. He had a hotel to do. So exposure was there for these things, but there were hardly one or two projects during that period. Then I started my own. Habib encouraged me, and I started with houses. And first 10 years was mostly only houses, a few here and there small buildings. And then about 20 years down the line, or 25, I started getting some corporate works and corporate buildings. Well, we were lucky, we got some schools also. So all of a sudden, we ended up getting a school. So that diversity in our practice started, it was a learning curve. As an architect, you learn in practice, you'll keep learning. There's no such thing as I know everything. But my journey into this what you call as the institute or the Pakistan Council, there are two bodies. One is a regulatory body and one is an institute. So when I became the chairman of my regulatory body, that's where I realized they started thinking I am their union leader, I'm the union president. So their demands were very odd. They were never to upgrade the profession. They were never to upgrade the education system. They were all that, listen, I'm a graduate, make sure the laws everywhere are that this job is only for an architect so that I end up getting job. And my job should be minimum this much salary. And there's all at government level because jobs were always government. Private sector, what 10 or 12 firms all over the country, how many graduates can they absorb? But all of a sudden now we have 30 universities. So, with so many happening, like 45 students in one batch. So imagine 17
Did
and
you
all
just
of them.
did you just said that we only have 30 practices? You said 30.
Probably, yeah, 30 practices which can give internships. If you start looking at a lot of younger ones who started their own single
like a solo
person
practitioner
office,
or one,
so
two.
there must be another 15, maybe maximum,
Okay.
who cannot really afford to have interns or even be able to pay interns.
So how many architects are there now? You said when you started there were 400.
There were 400-500. Now I think, according to Pakistan Council, there should be about 12,000 graduated
12,000 registered
architects
with them.
with them. But out of the 12,000, majority women are not into the profession. They've ended up leaving the profession, which happens in medicine also in our society. And then apart from that, a lot of them are like you, who've left the country for greener pastures, graduates, male, female. So
You have to bring that up. Okay. You are a great person to discuss the different components of what you have talked about, and you have seen it in your own lifetime also. So, talking about women leaving the profession of architecture, yes, we are in a culture and Pakistan, we are in a culture and a society of a patriarchal mindset. But American Institute of Architects, actually ACSA, American Collegiate School of Architecture, has published a study and research that 50% of women enters into the architecture. The one who are left are 25%, and they have the whole research on it. And I have written an article on LinkedIn on that. And the different reasons which are cited are also directly tied to the mindsets of how profession internally perceive women not being competent enough, and they are not given that same equitable opportunities to progress in the leadership roles. So even today, as we talk in America, women in the top leadership roles in architectural firms are only 8 to 10%. So this is issue of a mindset which is still ingrained in our brains. And this is not just man, this is ingrained in both men and women brains, that where women should be when they move up in a masculine profession like architecture.
Last 8 to 10 years, majority admissions on merit and on choice are women in majority of universities, except KPK, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. There's still less women applying into that. But all over, there are more women graduates coming out. And majority of teaching ladies are lady architects teaching. Again, because of our cultural thing that they fit into that very easily.
Yeah,
even
that
after
boxing,
marriage.
that boxing
even
is
after, Yeah, even after marriage. But to tell you something, for last 7, 8 years, we've hired always just we ended up having to hire one or two female architects because they're better than the male applicants.
There should be a healthy mix of both
True.
male and females. So let's go back and start from the deconstruction from when you started. So you went to Oregon for your architecture. Oregon is way ahead in terms of their futuristic thinking. But what they are trying to do is making this planet better in terms of living by design. So tell me, when you came back from Oregon, that was not the standard practice or the standard perspective of architecture.
When I came back, I I started applying here and there, and there was an American graduate interviewing, must have been 3 years senior to me. He said, you're from Oregon, that's where you guys are into environment and this and that. But here we need architects to build and design. So fine, and then I came home. But then when he met his chairman alone, so he probably tried to brief him that, listen, this guy had a degree from somewhere which is not really doing architecture. They're doing more environmental issues, They're into green and sustainable and things like that. So he came home and he told his sister, okay, you better talk to Ghani, my father, and tell him that your son went to a wrong school, and didn't do architecture. He did something else. So I was laughing. I said, it was architecture, but yes, we didn't do any high rises. We didn't do buildings as a student. But yes, we are trained to think. We were trained to, do things, and that's what architecture is all about.
And this reminds me of your comment about it is about expanding the thinking power and a creative thinking, that how
Yes.
a holistic approach can take place, and
Yes.
how important environment is. Unfortunately, you were just 40 years ahead of your time. Now environment.
Yeah, I know, but anyway, now most schools are teaching about it. But what bothers me the most right now is they've added courses called sustainability, or courses called. I said, what nonsense! In the 70s, when we were studying, every design studio, every professor talked about your work, your design has to be sustainable. So why do we have to now say that you need a course on sustainability? As an architect, from day one, everything you do has to be sustainable.
It looked like that any new fashion which comes in, fashion comes in architecture also. So it is a tokenism that if you have checked that box and can tell bodies and accreditation bodies and parents that, oh, we are on the bandwagon of the most new phenomena, and we are waiting for it to die down so that we can move to the next new phenomena. But this brings a very serious discussion in now, equity in architecture. There is this dissatisfaction and this concept that equity within architecture is not there. Architecture is a elitist profession. And why we know that it is elitist? Because when inflation or any economic hardship hits the world, architecture is the first profession which is not needed. People, when they cut down their budgets, they leave any new buildings, any new projects alone for a few years, which impacts the especially the new young and mid-level experienced professionals. How can we look into equity in architecture, and especially in countries of South Asia like Pakistan, Bangladesh?
But when you say equity in architecture, that is something, a perception you have, right? Because the clients were all elitist home builders, and interiors were for corporate English-speaking executives, etc., etc. So you were never really brought up front in meetings or direct contact and things like that. Yes, I think it was happening in larger firms probably, and smaller firms it's only one or two people, so it didn't happen that way. So I think that equity in architecture is changing, because most of these guys who are graduating now and coming in, their their first choice is architecture, and they still have that hunger, that desire to learn.
If it is in someone's mind that if you come from a elite school or elite high school, we already know where you fall. So that mindset needs to be acknowledged and try to move beyond it. So at least in terms of treatment and perception, I think it is important to take care of it. What do you think?
So now I think this is moving out, and I would say 50% of the students now are on scholarships because they can't afford and are not necessarily O-level, A-level. But originally, yes, they were. And originally, it was such a small school. They were literally like private tuition centers. So they got more attention from teachers. They got more attention from... So that's why they came out to be better also. But the sad part is, when they went into the field, they all thought they'll be the bosses rather than architects working. There is no shortcut in architecture. You have to go through the grind.
In our part of the world, we have to work three ways: laws, profession, and the society's mindset also. It's not just, it's just not on. But it is changing. I agree with
It's changing. Yeah.
It is changing because it is the need, the pressure of the economy. So this leads to the next question of equity by architecture. Why architecture all over the world, and especially in our parts of the world, is considered to be a professional service for a few who are rich and famous? They can afford it. But why architecture is not ingrained in the society, in the community, where they are valued as a professional service provider? Has our professional bodies done something to transform that mindset?
I don't think so. I don't think our professional bodies have done that. Our regulatory bodies have just unnecessarily made certain rules and restrictions which don't really help. I think that probably takes away the public from using an architect. But the professional bodies should try and hold some, nowadays webinars and seminars and things where they have to let people know that there is a value for hiring an architect, using an architect. The municipalities have to understand there is a value of hiring an architect rather than you only have an engineer or a building inspector. Somehow they think architecture is building. They're not looking at architects as more than a building designer.
So this means that architects don't have any influence. They are not considered influencers in the society. They are not considered part of the society or the community.
Architect is much more than just building a building or a house. Architect has to make a difference.
Artificial intelligence or AI, and they have created the software platforms and everything which we know about, especially house residential designs, houses, they can do it in a heartbeat. And that's how you see that BIM or building information modeling walking you through the interiors and all the intricate details. But if you get into the complex projects like healthcare, hospitals, research lab buildings, each one of them is a specialty project. And it still needs a human brain and a human capacity if you really want to innovate and create. In my mind, architecture is not moving holistically with the society and the direction of the innovation. And the question is, what are the different attributes or components which we can look at to move forward?
If our schools can train people to think this way or to educate them, that is one aspect. The other is if we as professionals can start, saying, okay, this much percentage of my time or my office is going to spend on these kind of projects which will have an impact on society, on people, and maybe will have a domino effect. Equity by architect can only be by grooming and and doing things which will create work for architects. In the process, you'll educate those people because I've done it for my dhobi or somebody who came and he said, I have this 120. But they don't listen to you because everybody else there is building something which is so environmentally wrong. And when I give them examples of the old houses of 80 yards with the sehen and with the veranda and that, nowadays it doesn't work because they feel that it's a joint family system and the sehen they don't need. They don't mind a room without a window. So it's crazy.
I have not heard that IAP or Pakistan has taken up sustainable development goals set by United Nations, which include everything. We talk about equity and health and well-being, NAD.
They talk about it, yeah, but they haven't really done anything serious.
We can talk about everything and anything under the sun, but where is the action? In developing a mindset of transformation, I think mentorship will also play a role. And I know you are a proponent of mentorship, so let's talk about that.
Well, you're right. Mentorships will make a difference. People here everybody wants to flood a leaf. They want to do it. They want their name. I said, no, we should just pool our resources and then do it.
When I selected my research project in final year, it was leprosy center, and it is highly stigmatized and infectious disease. A lot of people said, you're out of your mind. You will bring infection and give it to us. And I asked the dean, do you think I should do it? And he said, if you want to do it, do it. So that kind of mentorship, that kind of guidance, I am thankful for that advice. So I think students need that kind of encouragement and advice and mentorship also.
True. I think that is something can start at the institutes level. It's ideal that, yes, you do use the chapters. And every city nowadays, majority of cities have chapters. Use them, and then use the academia also with them, tie them together, and then replicate at various places.
So,
I think
in closing, Shahab, would you like to give us your final thoughts?
I think such conversations should happen, and we should, from everybody will have a different perspective, different ways of looking at things. You have different questions on it. I think this itself is an education for people. And personally, I think everybody in a firm who's done well or is at my kind of level in age can try and say, okay, the profession has given me a lot, not necessarily financially, but a lot in my brain. I should share it.
I want to thank you for your time today. I have a feeling that there will be many more conversations between us.
Sure. And get more people.
Yes, we will do. I will do that. And once we have individuals, then we will do collective.
You can do collective. Yes.
Because as you said, it is important to have an ongoing discussion about it beyond social meetings or social gatherings.
True.
And have different voices heard.
Yeah.